know that. So I was ranting about Southwest Airlines yesterday, and because they canceled my flight, and they left us in the dark. They didn't tell us why they were canceling us, and they made us stay overnight. Nice city, but Sunday night in San Diego, and your flight, the next flight is you got to be at the airport at 4:30, 5 o'clock. It's no fun. And so I said, I got very angry at everyone on Sunday night. They finally, about 12 hours later, came with an email to passengers saying, "Look, we're sorry. We know you have a choice. We're going to try to make it up to you. We're going to have a travel voucher." They're really doing all the butt kissing. It didn't come from the top ranks of Southwest, by the way. It didn't come from the CEO. They have a fall person that they designate to be the guy, the sort of proactive customer something, they called it on the email. And all right, within a couple hours, they get the voucher. The voucher is for a couple $100, which is what maybe, I want to get a Wayfair is on Southwest. If you know the Southwest culture, it's, their cheapest, which is, for one leg being canceled. Okay, I see it, but you really got to go round trip. You got to go round trip if you want me back as a customer. So I'm just putting it out there, Southwest. I'm an Alaska guy. First of all, you got to like an airline that puts a person of color on the tail. On the tail, on the back of that smiling face. I think it's an Native Alaskan. You got to like planes like that. You got to like companies like that. And so far, they haven't screwed up on me. When I started flying again, and I like Alaska because they go everywhere where I want to go, east, west, north, south, and the the Alaskan man, the Native Alaskan man. That's good enough for me. So I'm thank you, Southwest, but you got to do more. Like I said, I just want is it too much to want your butt to be kissed a little better by the corporates after they screw up so royally with a cancellation? And the circumstances of my cancellation, like I had a 9:30. I said, "Oh, I'm going to go on the 6:30. I'm going to fool everybody, get home early, and at no cost. Oh, I'm get one over on everybody." And so I switched, and that's the flight that gets canceled. My 9:30 originally said it goes off without a hitch, same place. The guy at the counter tells me, "Oh, the 6:30 was delayed because of some kind of weather thing." So it didn't sound like it was going to be a forever kind of thing, or it sounded like it was going to be temporary, but it wasn't temporary. It was they canceled the flight. They delayed it about twice, and then they canceled it. And the 6:30 that I'd gone to and made me mad. But now I just think, okay, Alaska all the way. Hey, hi, and they're not buying time on this program. They're not customers, or they would be customers of mine, but they're not. They're not advertisers. I'm just telling you, when you're out there flying, when people are out there flying again, after all the things that Southwest has been through the last, say, 4 or 5 months, they got a big hole to climb out from under. They've got to do more to win the confidence of the flying public. Anyway, Emil, Amok's Takeout, my takes on all things considerable. Welcome to the program. I'm the aforementioned Emil, Amok, Emil Guillermo to you. Hi. I get wound up, and maybe I got wound up because just as I went on today, there was these loud thunderclaps. I mean, I live in the part of California where you don't really get thunderclaps. I mean, not even when I go out after a good performance. I don't get a thunderclap. You don't get thunderclaps here. But the weather is weird. And I just spent the weekend in the desert. And to come to this, oh my God, it's like winter has returned. I thought I was gloating to friends I have on the East Coast in New York saying, "Oh, it's cold where you are. Look, it's the 90s here. It's glorious. Now we got winter again, or like, the tail end. Anyway, lots to talk about today. Yesterday, was May Day, May 1st. And I did mention how, it's a day we honor labor, and I might have mentioned my dad was a member of the Cooks Union in San Francisco, Local 2. I also am an ardent unionist when they will have me. I mean, a lot of times the unions aren't that strong, or the unions are kind of like this perfunctory thing that they work in cahoots with the corporates. And so I mention this today because, in passing yesterday, May 1st, but today the actual writer's strike is on. And I salute the writers and the Writers Guild. They fight on, boys and girls. Solidarity, I just feel that this is a key moment for unions, in the same way that the air traffic controllers in the 80s was a key moment for unions, in the same way that a lot of, the newspaper guild, oh my God, newspaper guild had no leverage when the newspapers were falling apart. And I was a member of the newspaper guild at one point, a member of the American Federation of Television and Radio Artists when they were just the television and radio artist, and did not include SAG. Later they merged with the Screen Actors Guild. I guess technically I was part of that. I'm still a part of After SAG. But do I get After SAG work? No. Because who's offering After SAG work for people like me? That's one thing. And I was looking at my career as I looked at all the places I worked. I was lucky when I was able to get an after job. And when I got an after job in San Francisco, it came after years of working in right-to-work states, the most notorious being Texas. Now, no one tells me, or you don't learn about this until you're in it, until you're in the labor market. Like, no one tells you when you're going to school, high school, college. You take any old job, right? You take whatever they pay you. Oh, $1.65, that's what they pay? Okay, I'll do it for $1.65. Do it for $3 an hour. I'll do it for $3 an hour. And they don't tell you about unions. And a lot of times young people were exempt from unions as I was growing up and working. And of course, I come from a newspaper tradition, which is the grand tradition of child labor violations in America. Thank goodness they finally did away with that. And they had adults do that dirty work. But I look at all throughout my adult life, unions made it better. Unions made sure I got at least the floor. It didn't help me get much more than that, but at least I got the floor. Here's the reality when it comes to workers. There are always going to be your superstars. There are always going to be people who are going to be more valued than you, who are going to get more than you. But if you're lucky enough to be in a union situation, at least you get the floor. They establish a floor, and that floor is usually pretty darn good compared to the rest of the world. So you don't complain very much. But as businesses get in trouble, industries get in trouble, they say, well, the floor starts being stagnant. This floor starts not going up consistently, keeping up with everything. And then suddenly the ceiling, even for the superstars, start falling. And then that's what happened in television and radio. There's still a handful of superstars out there who will make the tens of millions of dollars a year. And then there's the rest of us who are just clawing away at trying to make a decent middle-class living. Now, what's middle class? Middle class is redefined when it's a 1% world. And so suddenly if you want a that kind of upper middle class living, you're not cracking the 1%. And so middle is, it's a new reality in terms of where you are in terms of money and labor. But I just know when things fell apart in the television and radio business as a performer, talker, radio announcer, TV announcer, I see that sort of thing happening with the Writers Guild, because it used to be they had really cush jobs, and they were paid fairly, and they were paid well. And now, as the pressure comes on the big time studios with streaming and other costs, they're trying to get the money from somewhere. They're trying to get the profits from somewhere, and the place where they're trying to get the profits from are off the backs of the writers. That's wrong. And so power to the writers. The big complaint is these writers' rooms where the shows are created. The studios are trying to eliminate them or make them smaller, or make it so that, and I know this is what's happening, or this is the pattern because it's happened to other writers and newspapers and other content providers. They don't want you to have a career. They don't want you to have or to make a living. They want you to get gigs. They want you to be pretty much hand to mouth. You work piece by piece. They'll pay you fairly, quote unquote, fairly for a piece. You may not work again. One piece. It used to be that, oh, wow, I really would like a staff job. Well, we had staff jobs, and now we're just paying writers to come in, write a piece, and then go away. We don't house them. We don't give them offices. We don't expect them to have careers. We just want their work. We want to get the greatest content out of them, and then we want to just use and reuse and not pay, properly for residuals or anything like that. But those are the new conditions. You like that? Of course not. That's what the Writers Guild's fighting for, a kind of fairness in this new marketplace that should be booming if you look at the salaries made by the CEOs of studios, the CEOs of networks, and they're beholden to the shareholders, so they want to make sure that there's profits so that the shareholders build up shareholder value. Meanwhile, what do they do for, where do they find the profits if they're not getting the profits from actual audience members coming in to give them that kind of boost that, then in turn would give them ad revenue and whatnot, subscriber revenue. So if they've got to keep going and showing profits to the shareholders, now they look at the writers. Now they look at things like Chat GPT. Now they look at ways that how do we eliminate writers? How do we eliminate people? How do we automate the creative process? This is stupid, but it's the way that they're going because they need the money. They need to satisfy the shareholders. And that's what the Writers Guild is fighting. And I hope they win, because if they lose, it will be a sad day. Sad day for the writers. I mean, you hear there's a lot of writers who make a lot of money. A handful. They're still Writers Guild members. But they make a lot of money because they've got something else going. They're the stars, they're the hosts, they're also the producers and the showrunners. But basically they're part of the Writers Guild. Like I said, the ceiling isn't as affected, so people can make as much money as they can if they have that opportunity. We're talking about the people on the floor. The floor is not moving. The floor is falling apart. Younger writers, staff writers, they're getting axed. The writers' rooms are getting cut back. They're trying to make up the money that they used to pay well to these people. They're trying to put it back into the corporate machine so that the corporations show profit. It's not fair. And look, everyone gets hurt if that floor, goes away. Even the showrunners, who used to be lowly writers, because they're going to have to do it all themselves. And then, of course, ultimately the audiences get hurt because we don't get the kind of shows we want. We don't get the content. And right now, really, this is, if they called it the golden age of TV, it's because people have no longer relegated television to this. I mean, people in their 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, and on, in terms of narrative platforms, it was always books. It was always literature, right? That was considered high. Then movies next, right? And then movies jumped over literature. They're kind of, they need each other. Good literature, books, and movies. The great ones come, feed off each other. Television was always seen as like some poor relation, right? And you used to see it in the quality. I mean, watch television in the 70s and 80s. It was not great. 90s, 2000s, 2010s, 2020, television got better. Streaming helped. And now streaming has redefined, well, what is your device? Is it a TV? Is it a theater? Is it between streaming, COVID? It sort of changed the landscape for everybody. And now when the writers' contracts are up, they don't want to negotiate like the old days. They're saying we're in a new era. And the Writers Guild is saying, yeah, we're in a new era. We need more of those streaming profits. We need more of those, the profits from digital. So if this doesn't get resolved, we're not going to see new content maybe until, well, some people say the strike could go on until July. That's going to delay some product. But no one budges until someone's hurt. And I know it could go a long time. I mean, there's content that they can use as reruns. Summer used to be the time for reruns. And now you get a lot of first run things because that's an opportunity to try different things, right? New stories, new types of programs. So I'm not feeling good about the Writers Guild strike. I think it's going to go on a while, but I'm in solidarity with the writers on strike because, if you look at all the CEO salaries, they're making more than anyone thinks. And compared to the pittance that relatively, the pittance that writers are getting, the corporates can afford this. They definitely can afford this. They can afford paying the writers more. They can afford sharing a little bit with the writers in terms of streaming money. They can afford making sure there are writers there for the writers' rooms. And so how does this fit in terms of the idea of diversity and the idea of, well, how are we going to get Filipino stories or Asian American stories? Well, those projects have always been sort of fringy until they've proven that they can make money. But if you got to cut stories, where are you going to cut? Least, proven kind of products that you don't know if there's an audience. It means that you're going to go more toward mass audience, mass appeal, and some of these gems that we really love that are kind of provocative and quirky and wouldn't have been thought to have been commercially successful, except someone took a chance because they could, because they didn't have the pressure to make money. You see, this is what's going to happen if we go back to a world where we got to make money. Well, sure, we know they got to make money, but they really got to make money. And you're not going to get the kind of opportunities that we've had the last 5 years. I mean, I don't know, would beef had been made? You know, maybe. I mean, but it may not have been made if it weren't for, all the other Korean success stories. Netflix just announced the other day that they're going to put billions into developing that South Korean kind of narrative ethos, which has become so popular. It's like a genre, right? Like Bollywood is a genre. It's like an ethnic genre, and it's commercial. It sells. It's like BTS is kind of like rip the cover off and say, "Hey, look, we're not white, but we're commercial. We're the universal." So there's money out there. I'm sorry that we're seeing a strike, because it's going to have some impact. Because even when things are settled, someone's going to pay. Someone's going to pay for whatever will be lost. So I hope that the two sides get back to it. I did want to mention it mostly. Look, the strike started today, the Writers Guild strike, but also because, May Day, May 1st, labor, it's important. And, it's important to talk about the, showbiz type of unions, because those are the only unions I was a part of. I mean, it's not like I got my hands dirty. I will say this about unions. Unions were great. You're not alone, but when you're fighting your fight, you are alone. And I had union lawyers. I had, union people behind me. But in the end, I'm glad they were there, but they were not this idealistic sense that, hey, it's me and you and the guys and we're fighting together. No, it was, this is what your dues get you. Get the union lawyer. We're going to fight for you. But in the end, you're just going to have to accept a version of loss as a version of a defeat, meaning maybe you leave the job or walk away from the job. You're going to have to accept that as a win. I mean, really, it's not like, hey, the union's here. We won. We're going to win. The fight's on. That wasn't my experience. I'm still happy that I was a union member in the times I've had some disputes. A guy like me would have some disputes. But always less than, I don't want to say I was less than satisfied, but it was always less than you thought you would get after fighting with the union, or after having the union with you fighting. So, yeah, I just look over my labor history. Yeah, I worked in Texas, right to work state, $3 an hour, big time radio station, $3 an hour. Then I moved to television a couple years later, big time station in Texas, big time city, $3 an hour. Oh, Emil, that must have been a long time ago. Well, they didn't have horses on the freeways. Meaning it was still modern times. But keep in mind which states are the quote-unquote right-to-work states. Places like Texas, usually places in the South. Right to work means you have a right to work for an employer who will underpay you and undervalue you and mistreat you. That is your right. Oh, not the employer's right to do anything like that. No. He's just doing business. Don't take it personally. But that's the way of the world. That is, I had a discussion today with someone. And I gave him my views. He said, well, Emil, I can see why you're not a corporatist. I see why you, work for yourself. Yeah. Are you saying you see why I haven't held down a job in a long time? So, anyway, from the Asian American Legal Defense and Education Fund, they put up a tweet. They were part of a No More 24 protest. No Más 24. And they write, we were proud to join community activists advocating for humane treatment of the home health attendants who care for the sick and elderly. Most of these workers are immigrants, women of color, especially Asians. And they're not letting me see the rest of this tweet. But I mean, it's real. I mean, healthcare workers, you look at them, they're Asian, they're Spanish, they're needed, and they get ripped off. Here's another tweet. Protesters held up signs in English, Chinese, and Spanish. Some shared their own stories, like this home attendant who calculated her lost pay to $235,000 for 8 years of 24-hour shifts. Can you imagine that? You work 24-hour shifts, so you're underpaid. You don't get the meal penalty. Ooh. People used to say, oh, working with a meal. I got a meal penalty. That's what unions get you. But yeah, you work 24-hour shifts. You get definite time off, and definite meals. And you get, if you get a short turnaround, there's penalties for a short turnaround, which is anything less than 12 hours. I mean, man, unions protect you at a very minimal level. They established a floor, but thank goodness for a floor, because if there weren't a floor, you'd be on a race to the bottom. That's just the truth. The stars in a union world still do well, because for some reason the studios or the stations that I worked for, they want to pay the stars. They don't want to pay the rank and file. And that's why you need a union to establish that floor. And if we don't have that floor, like I said, like I had the floor in San Francisco, I had the floor in Washington, D.C. Places like Houston, Dallas, forget it. I'm still in the business, still behind a microphone after all these years. But now you take less glamorous industries, like, yeah, you can get behind a microphone. You're in showbiz. I talked to a guy, comedian friend. Say, Emil, where are you? Still in the business? I wasn't a comedian. I was in broadcasting. He said, well, I don't know. I speak into a microphone in my closet. I guess I'm in the business. But the glamour puss industries, people don't have much sympathy. But the word in the Writers Guild strike that comes up is this idea of precarity. Don't you want us to be members of the middle class? We're in a precarious situation. You're trying to turn us into a gig type of thing. Instead of we can have salaries and careers and steady work, and we can have a life. That's what we want. We don't need to be Bill Gates. We don't need to be, gazillionaires. If our work is so honored by audience and by people who come to it and flock to it, and people make money, great. But we want to do our creative work. We want to have careers doing our creative work. That's what the union is trying to protect at the Writers Guild. So you talk about like glamour puss industries, like, showbiz, but I was in broadcasting. Compare that to the people working in the home healthcare fields, the home attendants. We need unions for us all. And just think, look at what they're doing in France. They're protesting because they raised the retirement age from like 62 to 64, something like that. I mean, here they're trying to raise the retirement age to 70. It's 68. It used to be 65. They tried to raise it to 68. But here's the thing. In all these rules, I mean, if we had good work, good jobs, if we had ways that people love, you'd work forever, wouldn't you? I mean, you'd do things for free. I mean, I was with some theater people this weekend. Some who make some money, some who don't, some who do other things to make their money, and then they do the theater as a kind of joy in their life. And they were saying to themselves or to the group, this is why we do this. This is why we do our shows on stage. And it's because it brings joy. But in order to develop or to have that joy, you have to have a sense of gratitude. Gratitude that you're able to do this, that you're able to create, that you're able to be you in the best possible way, expressing yourself authentically. And that's kind of the point of work. Ideally, it's the point of work. So we talked about labor and writers. I did my Southwest rant. It's Asian Pacific American Heritage Month. I want to talk about Thao. He was the Asian Hmong officer, now former officer in Minnesota. He was convicted of aiding in George Floyd's killing, and I want to talk about his situation. First, I want to talk about a couple things. This is sort of, I like to read the GOP far right wing media because then you don't have to, and then I can tell you what they're saying and tell you how stupid they are. So one of the stupidest things that I saw involves an Asian American, Nikki Haley, who's seen at a firing range. Here's a photograph of her shooting, looks like an AR-15 style weapon. This has become MAGA GOP porn, right? Ooh, here's a woman and her AR-15. And it's super necessary if you want MAGA GOP voters. So Nikki Haley is shown with an AR-15 because she's hunting for voters, hunting for, I don't even know if it's like-minded people, because I think Nikki Haley is a little smarter than what she gives off. I think she's hunting for voters. And on normal Twitter, I see where a lot of people just call her on it, but there are some people who are just going crazy. Here's Nikki Haley in her gun pose, right? It's sort of like, this is the cheesecake shot for GOP women, Woman with an AR protecting an unborn child. That would be the ideal, right? And burning a book. That would be the ideal sexy GOP pose, I think. And shame on Nikki Haley it shows you where politics is right now and how you develop a pandering sense. You develop this pandering sense because without it, you don't get the votes. Need the votes. But I don't think Nikki Haley, at this point, has a shot. I mean, CBS did a poll released yesterday, and 59% of the likely GOP primary voters say former President Donald Trump challenges woke ideas, compared to 24% who say that Florida Governor Ron DeSantis does. So that tells you who the front runners are. And it's not really much of a front runner state because, I mean to say that there's only one guy. 58% say they'll vote for Trump in the Florida primary. 22% say they'll back DeSantis. 5% say Pence. 5% say they'll support Vivek Ramaswamy. No other candidates polled 5% or more. And that's why Nikki Haley has her AR-15 pose out there saying, hey, look at me. Look at me. I'm for the Second Amendment. I think. I put bullet holes in your Constitution. So that's a new GOP poll coming out. Nikki Haley's reaction to it. Another story in the GOP media that's big, the GOP right-wing media, and like I said, I share this with you so you don't have to read it. Tucker Carlson is said to have received an offer to make $100 million a year plus equity. This is what's being said out there, and this is really, if you're going to be a writer or a content person, and I should have known this when I left my job at NPR and a mucky muck at CBS, have lunch with this person. Person says, Emil, there's still time. You should be an entrepreneur. Oh, great. Entrepreneur needs money. I have no money. You're telling me I need a job. I come to you for a job and you're telling me to go get money and be an entrepreneur. You don't want to hire me. So, and it makes sense to be an entrepreneur if you have content, you own the content, you make the content, you own the content, you sell the content. Entrepreneur. Tucker Carlson, if he gets $100 million working with this group, this was reported in the right-wing media. It's for anything he wants. I imagine he would not just get paid because the company's figuring that he will bring in advertising dollars, an audience which will bring in advertising dollars, but they're also counting that, well, at $100 million, you get part of the business, really. You get equity. And that's a thing that workers don't get. That's why the Writers Guild strike is ridiculous. It's not like the writers are asking for equity. They're asking for equal pay. They're asking for more help. They're asking for protection. They're asking to make sure they have a middle-class life. They're not asking for equity. That always, makes corporatists go crazy because equity means you want a profit share? We got to share this with you? You want to be partners? You're labor. You're not partners. That's really the scary. The corporatists, the elitists, they don't want to work with the workers because they're elitists. You're in your sweatpants and your work togs, and they're in their fancy $2,000 suits. They don't get their hands dirty because they have equity. They own you. That's the corporate slavery, right? They own you. And you want equity? Well, that makes you an owner. Put on the $2,000 suit. Go upstairs. Corner office. But if you're in a writer's room, well, you belong to them. You can't be asking for partnerships. So Tucker Carlson, though, he's getting equity, according to this one report in the right-wing media. One of the things he's considering, he's got a lot of things to consider, but, look, whatever he gets, he's not getting as a journalist. He's getting it as a paid liar and provocateur and, fabulist. He's getting paid as a fabulist. But people like that in the right wing. All right, it's Asian American Native Hawaiian Pacific Islander Heritage Month. and nippy him. And you know, I talked to someone today on the phone, and I asked that person, it's Asian American Native Hawaiian Pacific Islander Heritage Month, a nippy him. Yeah. And yes, and I'm sure you know of it, right? And he says, I've never heard of it before. And he's a young kid in his 30s, and I'm saying, what do you mean? I mean, you're in your 30s. The whole month is like 46 years old. Started in the 70s, started as a week, then it became a month, went through all these name changes. What do you mean you don't know? This is why you got to repeat it all the time. A nippy him is now what it's called. It used to be AA Heritage Month, then APA Heritage Month, and AAPI Heritage Month, and now a nippy him. You can't repeat it enough. It's heritage. Heritage, not history. Heritage we could be proud of. History we can learn from and not repeat it because it's nothing to be proud of. That's one of the things about history. But heritage, we love our heritage. We're proud of that. So this next story is going to go down as one of the things we're not so proud about. Ex-officer Thao, Minnesota, convicted of aiding George Floyd's killing. Yesterday, it was filed. A judge filed a 177-page ruling. Released today. Quote, there is proof beyond a reasonable doubt that Thao's actions were objectively unreasonable from the perspective of a reasonable police officer when viewed under the totality of the circumstances. That was the conclusion that said Thao had, it convicted Thao of aiding George Floyd's killing. Remember, he was the guy who held back bystanders while his colleagues restrained George Floyd as George Floyd was dying. Thao was found guilty of aiding and abetting manslaughter. And you'll recall he already has been convicted on federal charges. And he wanted to, his case here got this far because he still felt on these state charges that what he did was very innocent. I mean, that's according to Thao, right? Because he felt like, hey, I stood here while all the other officers were doing their thing, and he rejected a plea deal in state court last August. He said, quote, it would be lying to plead guilty. All the other three former officers, they copped right away to what they did, but Thao was the holdout. And Thao just felt that when he and Chauvin, who was the main guy who was convicted, when he arrived, the other officers were struggling with Floyd. He said it was clear to him, as with the other officers who tried to put Floyd into the squad car, that he was under, quote, the influence of some type of drugs. And then you can hear body cam footage of Thao saying to onlookers, this is why you don't do drugs, kids. He was kind of like, he was thinking he was being a good guy, warning people. He thought he was a human police cone. And when people tried to help, You know, he was telling people to back off. This is from an AP story. Thao acknowledged he heard onlookers becoming more anxious about Floyd's condition and that he could hear Floyd saying, "I can't breathe." But Thao said he didn't know there was anything seriously wrong with him, even as an ambulance took him away. The judge didn't think that was credible. See, like you got to prove that to a judge. But this is Thao talking, saying, "Hey, look, I'm not trying to say what Thao did was right, but he is, number one, an immigrant. Number two, just doing his job. Number three, in this mindset that this is what I do. I'm here to do my job. I'm a human traffic cone. I'm here to direct traffic and keep people away from the scene." And I can see why he felt innocent. But the judge wrote that Tao's testimony was not credible and wrote that under Minneapolis Police Department policies, quote, "it was objectively unreasonable to, among other things, encourage fellow officers to engage in a dangerous prone restraint for 9 minutes and 24 seconds. Meaning he should have said, "Hey guys, a little too long on this. Come on, ease up." Didn't do that. Encourage those officers not to use a hobble. Actively assist a restraint by acting as a human traffic cone. And prevent bystanders from rendering medical aid, because people wanted to come and help George Floyd. And Thao prevented that. The judge said Tao's actions were even more unreasonable in light of the fact that he was under a duty to intervene to stop the other officers' excessive use of force and was trained to render medical aid. Instead of stopping people from helping George Floyd, in other words, Thao should have done something. So sentencing for Thao is August 7th. He could get 4 years on the manslaughter count, which he would serve concurrently with his 3.5-year federal sentence. So we're not talking about a lot more time, but we are talking about him standalone getting this verdict, getting this conviction, aiding in George Floyd's killing. It's a sad day for the Asian American community because Thao is one of us. Sad day for America, you know, when police don't know better and act this way, when they should intervene to stop in what ended up being the killing of George Floyd. But in the way, like I said, I understand Tao's thinking. You know, he's there. He's a junior officer. He's there to do his job. He's doing what he's told. He's thinking this is the right thing, but it was the wrong thing. So, I mean, the only reason why he's singled out is because he said, if he said guilty, he'd be lying. Doesn't feel guilty. He feels not guilty is his plea. And today he lost. Thao, former Minneapolis police officer, found guilty in the aiding, or convicted of aiding George Floyd's killing today in Minnesota. All right, that's a tough Asian American Pacific Islander Heritage Month note. Like I said, that's history, not heritage. Our heritage is the culture, the food. But in some ways, the culture, you know, you're part of a group that has been told to go wherever. And you see authority in a different way. And you see your job is, I was told to stand here and prevent people from coming and helping. I mean, it may seem illogical, but you know, Thao in his mind said, "This is my job. I'm doing my job." He should have been a little more compassionate, a little more human. Well, he's serving his time, or will serve his time, August 7th, the sentencing. All right. That's it for today. Oh, I wanted to share something. You know, I do these meditative studies, and there's this idea that the world is a projection of your thoughts, right? What you see in the world, projection of your thoughts. And so if you want to change the world, you don't go out externally in the world and like change it. You could build a house, that is an external change. You can like stop war, take away guns. That would be an external change. But in many ways, the easier way to see change is by doing it internally. So if the world is a projection of your thoughts, then the thoughts that you have, if they're different, they become the truth. They become the belief of what you're saying. And then the idea of change is it's simpler. It's something that's doable. It's a little thing. It's not like a massive thing. It's not like, oh, I got to build a house now if I want to see a house. It's like looking at things differently is the change that's doable. It's a change that can happen. That's the revolution. The revolution isn't this big thing. The revolution is in seeing those little changes that come from a change in your vision of how you see the world. I heard that today, spoken by someone who's running for president. Not Joe Biden, but Marianne Williamson. And I said, yeah, that is a way of looking at life that is, it's not much different from be the world you want to, or be the change you want to see, or be the change you want to be. It starts internally with ourselves, looking out externally. And it's a help when you think that things are so impossible and can't be done. When you really think that, oh, change, you get frustrated, change isn't possible. Well, you got to see this truth that if you change your beliefs and your ideas of what that world is out there, that change is the revolution. That change is the ideal. It's easier to accomplish than we think. And it can be very helpful when the frustration and the, mounts, and, you think, oh, how are we ever going to get to the answer? Begin the change internally. And maybe that's what they mean when they say be the change. Be the change you want to see. Regular listeners know that we're here Monday through Friday, just talking, telling you about my day, telling you about the stories that we see, and reacting to them. Asian Pacific American Heritage Month, or Asian American Pacific Islander, or Asian American Native Hawaiian Pacific Islander Heritage Month. That's what it's called officially. It's happening. But you see how it dovetails with a lot of important events like May Day, thinking about labor. The strike is on. The Writers Guild strike is on. Tomorrow, I guess we should talk about the national debt, huh? The debt ceiling. What the Republicans are doing, playing politics with our lives. If the Republicans are, if they're using politics to screw up the economy, I don't know what is on their what's in their heads. And it's already kind of odd that the Republicans they're anti-LGBTQ, they're anti-abortion, they know that they are alienating a lot of people who aren't going to vote for them. What are they thinking? A lot of people are saying this poll, CBS YouGov poll said a lot of people are off Trump. There's no one in the Republican Party at this point who has a real shot at defeating Trump yet. But maybe I don't know. But Republican values, the anti-woke values, just seem out of step with the modern world. So we'll probably talk about that tomorrow. Oh, the Warriors are playing tonight. The Warriors and Lakers. Go Warriors. Stephen Curry. I hope he shows up. Sometimes he doesn't show up. You can't be a superhero every day, That's sort of sad because, it means that sometimes the baby gets dropped. But it's hard to be the superhero every day when you're 35, as Stephen Curry is. But if he wants the Warriors to win, I think he does. He's got to be the superhero every game. Because the other people around him are heroes and they're good, but they're not superheroes. They're not Stephen Curry. So we'll see Stephen and LeBron play. I've seen them live a number of times the regular season. I think I've seen some playoff games too, but I since COVID I've avoided crowds. And I kind of like it. I just as soon sit and watch the game on TV. But I'll be watching. Go Warriors. All right. I like to meditate, so please, a little loving kindness meditation begins with you, goes out into the world, and comes back. Starts with a little prayer. You know the little prayer. It's a prayer, chant, phrases. It goes like this. As I wish for me, I wish for you. May you be safe. May you be happy. May you be healthy. And may you live with ease. Emil Guillermo here. amok.com for replays. Catch.org/blog. Until next time. Mahal